The radio crackled with panic. "This is Eagle Company. We're pinned down, 3 sides. We've got wounded everywhere. Any air support, respond." At 17,000 feet, Captain Sarah, Blaze, Carter heard the desperation in their voices. She glanced at her radar, no other aircraft within 100 miles. She was alone. Below her, 298 U.S. soldiers were surrounded by over 1,000 insurgents in the mountains of Khost Province, Afghanistan. Command had already issued the retreat order, labeling the situation unsalvageable. But Sarah didn't see numbers. She saw people, brothers, fathers, friends, fighting for their lives. And in that instant, she made a decision that would defy protocol, risk her career, and etch her name into military history forever. Sarah had always been the kind of pilot who didn't just follow rules, she understood them, bent them when she had to, and broke them when she must. Growing up, she'd been the daughter of a quiet Air Force mechanic who'd spent years fixing planes but never had the chance to fly one. Every day, he'd come home with grease on his hands and tell her stories about the A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, the beast built to protect ground troops. The A-10, her father used to say, doesn't care about beauty, it cares about saving lives. She carried those words into every mission. That morning had started like any other. She'd been ordered to patrol near the Eastern Ridge, a low-threat zone, nothing more than routine watch duty. Her Warthog's engines hummed like thunder as she traced the desert sky, the sun rising like fire over the horizon. But when the emergency call came through, the serenity shattered. The ground troops were pinned by insurgents who had ambushed them in a narrow valley, no air support available, no artillery within range. Command had assessed it, too hot for extraction. Sarah's co-pilot back at base, Lieutenant Jensen, patched through the order, "Blaze, stand down. Do not engage. We'll coordinate a retreat at dawn." But dawn was hours away. The men wouldn't make it till dawn. She tightened her grip on the flight stick. Her heart pounded. "Negative, Command," she said quietly. "They won't survive that long." "Blaze, that's an order." She turned off the radio. Below her, the valley looked like a scar carved into the earth. Smoke rose from burning vehicles. Through her targeting screen, she saw the trapped soldiers huddled behind shattered rocks, out of ammo, bleeding, exhausted. Sarah knew the risks. The A-10 was powerful but slow, a tank killer, not meant for air-to-air combat. Once she went in, she'd be within range of every enemy weapon below. She breathed deeply, whispering to herself, if the A-10 was built to protect, then it's going to do what it was built for. Then she dove. The scream of her engines split the sky. The insurgents scattered, confused, as her GAU-8 Avenger cannon roared, an unbroken torrent of 30mm rounds tearing through enemy lines like a thunderstorm of steel. Each pass she made was deadly precise, cutting off flanking routes, taking out mortar positions, and shielding the pinned soldiers from advancing enemies. Her fuel gauge dropped rapidly. Ammunition was running low. Command tried to re-establish contact, their voices sharp with anger. "Captain Carter, disengage immediately." "That's an order." She ignored them again. Between each dive, she could hear the faintest transmissions from the ground. "Whoever's up there, don't stop. We owe you our lives." Their words fueled her. For over an hour, she strafed the valley, executing maneuvers that should have been impossible in such tight terrain. She took hits. One shell clipped her right wing, another tore through her fuselage. Warning lights blinked furiously, but she stayed on target, her every movement driven by instinct and heart. Then her last ammunition belt ran dry. Smoke filled her cockpit, alarms blaring. She had nothing left but her own courage. Down below, the soldiers saw her crippled jet banking low, wings trembling. Many thought she was going down. But instead, Sarah angled her plane toward the ridgeline, straight at the insurgents' supply trucks. She released her final remaining payload, 2 cluster bombs, striking the line dead center. The resulting explosion shook the valley like an earthquake, wiping out the enemy's entire rear position. When the dust settled, silence hung over the battlefield. The insurgent fire stopped completely. The soldiers, bleeding and shaken, lifted their heads to see the A-10 circling overhead, trailing smoke, but still flying. Sarah's voice came through weak but steady. "You're clear now, Eagle Company. Get your men out." By the time reinforcements arrived, Sarah's A-10 had barely made it back to base. Her landing gear failed halfway, forcing a belly landing that sparked across the tarmac like fire. Medics rushed in as she climbed out of the cockpit, her flight suit scorched, her face streaked with soot, but she was alive. Command wasn't pleased. She disobeyed direct orders, risked a $19 million aircraft, and taken on an entire enemy force alone. A formal inquiry began immediately. But before the hearing even started, something unexpected happened. The 298 soldiers she'd saved, every single one, signed a letter to the Pentagon. They called her the Angel of Coast. They told the story of how one pilot's defiance had turned certain death into survival. And when the footage from her gun camera was released, showing her daring low-altitude runs and the destruction she unleashed on the enemy, public opinion turned into a storm of respect and awe. The inquiry was dropped. Instead, she was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor. Years later, when cadets at flight school asked her what made her break orders that day, she smiled softly and said, "Orders are made by people far from the fight. But when you can see the fight, when you can hear the cries of those depending on you, you don't fly by the book. You fly by the heart." And in that one act of courage, Captain Sarah Carter didn't just save 298 soldiers. She reminded the world what true leadership looks like, doing what's right, even when it means standing alone. Because sometimes, history isn't changed by the ones who follow the rules. It's changed by the ones brave enough to break them.